Well, hey YouTube, it's Petey Two Finger, and here we are for Dickish Comment of the Day. We have the video from my YouTube channel, DIY Guitar Amp, 100 watt Spring Reverb, Marshall J-Fit preamp. Petey built this amp last year. It was used all summer as part of the wet rig. It was the dry. Run with a noise gate, 2-channel with a boost, Carl Martin Plexitone to goose it. You can hear this amplifier here on this video, remote jam. Old 57, we'll click on that, and I know this takes a while to get going, so I'll fast forward it a bit. Yeah, this guy who calls himself Rodrigo Montiero commented, probably it didn't work. Probably it didn't work. So obviously he didn't read, he didn't click, because if you click, you can hear it working right here. And there we see Gopti playing the bass. Here's a guy playing the guitar with 2 fingers through this amplifier here. That's the Marshall with the built-in spring reverb. Can you hear it? I hear Marshall-y goodness with a lovely spring reverb tone on that guitar. I guess we didn't really watch the video, did you? You just commented. Not the first rodeo, meaning this chassis, I had used this already in another project, and I filled the holes with epoxy. Not the first rodeo. Here's the spring reverb driver. And shoddy workmanship due to use of plumber's flux. Look at the terrible soldering. Oh, it probably didn't work. Pedal PCB M80. It uses SMT, the SMT J-FETs, and we're going to talk about those again later. This goes by really fast. Here's the spring reverb tank. There's the spring reverb driver. You got a preamp spring reverb driver power pack. It's 12.5 volts through a 7809 V-Reg. Drops it down to 9 volts DC. TPA 3116D 200 watt Class D amp board. Power amp runs off 12 18650 cells at 24 volts. And I see a fuse. So yeah, this goes by pretty quick. Okay, you got me. Now, here I say the complete audio path uses all shielded wire for yucks. And what I mean by that is if I don't specifically say, okay, I get the fact that the metal chassis for the amp provides a quote-unquote Faraday cage to prevent RFI, but I went the extra mile and provided a fully shielded audio path just to make sure that it's as quiet as it possibly could be, I'll get some guy in the comment going, why'd you use shielded wire when the RFI shielding of the Faraday cage of the steel chassis should have been enough? Dickish comment of the day number 3, right? Coincidental afterthought. This is the spring tank sitting here. Becomes a design feature. You see, I used this elastic band going through these key rings to these 4 mounting holes on the chassis to float the spring tank, and that way the vibration, if I set this down on the same plane where the speaker is vibrating, those vibrations are going to carry through and they're going to vibrate the spring tank and it's going to feed back. Well, not if you float it. If you float it, it becomes shock mounted. Now, here is the board. The 4th spring reverb driver worked. The first 3 did not, and we purchased those from a company called Osh Park. Osh Park does not refund, so I got screwed. The designer of this, which was the Elysium, he called himself Quantum Effects, and I commented on him. I said, hey dude, I built 3 of your things and none of them worked. And finally he got frustrated in dealing with me and said, look, I never said I was an electronics wizard. He sold me these boards and I didn't get my money back. He said, you need to look into the Surfy Bear, which is a $300 vacuum tube spring reverb device. And I'm like, the first thing I said was, dude, we play on batteries. Now, vacuum tube devices, you can't play them on batteries. You need an AC outlet. And we play remote in the woods. So, anyway, this guy, anybody who comes at me with something about tubes is a complete idiot because we play through batteries. Everything has to be battery powered for us to be able to use it. That's the first law of the gear that I purchase, you know. So it's
Hey friends, I'm Otis Gibb.
it's often something that people they don't consider that. So the amp sounds fantastic. We used it all summer on our remote music days. Now I'm guessing, see, this is at 1 minute, 1 second. So Rodrigo Montiero, who made the comment that it probably didn't work, dickish comment of the day, he did not make it 1 minute into the video. This guy is thinking about building an amp. He's considering building it. So does he have the patience? Does he have what it takes to be able to plan out and execute a project of this magnitude when he cannot make it 1 minute into a video with someone who has successfully completed this goal, and he's going to come at me with it probably didn't work? Well, if you would have been able to read, if you would have been able to pay attention, if you would have had the attention span to sit through a minute-long video, you would have read that you made a fool out of yourself with your foolish comment, your incorrect, wrong comment. Rodrigo Montiero was completely wrong when he said probably it didn't work, because here's the proof. The amp sounds fantastic. We used it all summer. Go watch old number 57. Now, this was not the first dickish comment of the day. When I was building these, I made this post on my social media. I took a break from computer hell. I got a little done on the fun side of things. Tonight's victim, Eleni Mark I JFET preamp build. Wiring up the pots tomorrow and testing it. We built the 2-channel, slightly larger brother version of the same circuit, but it's a Marshall. And it sounded phenomenal. I was really shocked how much I liked it through a single Fender 12. But one channel was a bit janky. It had RFI, radio frequency interference, and lower gain. So I'm going to see, as this one has more gain, and Tony Iommi, I'm not sure what I continue to write there. I had a dickish comment of the day from Analog Mike Piera. This is Analog Man himself, folks. The creator of the 3-year waiting list, $380 king of tone guitar pedal, the expert himself, writes, the old ladies had a FET preamp? What? Question mark, exclamation point, question mark. And he's laughing at me. The original uses vacuum tubes. This layout I built uses JFETs. A bit about me and why. Trust me, as this has a point besides soldering and bragging on social media. My wife and I make music in a duo quite often to entertain ourselves. And I'm sure I went on to say we live in an apartment and we respect our neighbors and our landlord. So we build battery operated equipment and we go remote and we play as often as we can in the spring, summer, and fall outdoors so we can push air. If we were able to plug in with AC, we would use the tube gear that we own, the tube amps that we own. But in this case, we have to find a way around that because we're playing through battery-operated gear. The fact that I'm being policed on my own Facebook page by a guy who calls himself Analog is telling. I was just wondering why. I know some Dumbles had an FET preamp. Now, here's at one point I have to interject, okay? There's a famous story about Tony Iommi on the first Black Sabbath tour where they came over and he went to do the sound check at the first venue and he couldn't believe how crappy his amp sounded. And the reason was in Europe, the power is 220 volts. So his amplifiers in the United States were only getting 110 volts, which is half the voltage. And they didn't work. They had RFI, they had crappy tone, and they weren't loud enough. And it ruined the first Black Sabbath tour. And this is a famous story. So what that means is everyone in this game of pedals and amps knows that story. And everyone knows that the Laney amps were tube amps. Everyone knows that. I said the original post clearly states Laney Mark I JFET preamp build. And he's refusing to communicate with me. He doesn't want to be called out. So you're honestly telling me you were not aware that the Laney Mark I is a vacuum tube device. Now he comes back and graces me with a response. Mind you, I had been friends with this guy for over a year. And he never once commented anything on my Facebook. Except to call me out. To call me out, where I was going to have to come out and say, nope, what I built was not vacuum tube. The original is. I'm not as good as you. I'm not analog. What if I was named Alan? I could be analog Alan Pike. I could be a big swinging dick, making millions of dollars, ripping people off, convincing them that the only way to go is buy my $600 pedal that you got to wait 5 years for. Boy, I would be eating good. You're honestly telling me you were unaware that the Laney Mark I is a vacuum tube device. It is feasible that it had an FET input like a dumbbell. See, listen, why is he calling dumbbell? Like he spelled it right in the first time that he brought it up. Didn't he? Yeah. But he's got to put it down. He's got to belittle it. And this is why I'm saying this is a dickish comment. This is why I'm saying this is a dickish comment. It's because he is being negative. He's shitting on Dumble. He is calling him a dumbbell. Look at that. Analog Mike Piera with a dickish comment on me. PD Two Finger, I don't sell pedals. I never have. I've gone on and made multimeter tutorials, multiple multimeter tutorials, multiple Vero tutorials. I don't charge any money for the information that I release, and I've done nothing but try to pay back to the community. I make videos that I wish I would have seen at the time when I needed to see them. That's what I do. And I've gone way out of my way. But really, I haven't gotten much back for it. Except for trollish, dickish comments like this. It is feasible that he had a FET input like a dumbbell. Some Marshalls had diode clipping, I believe. Yeah, you know. You know. And they're pushed by a TLO72 op amp, which is what you know. You know that they're two 3.5 millimeter red clipping diodes pushed by a TLO72 op amplifier. I believe. Get GTFO, Analog Mike Piera. GTFO with that BS. I specifically study pedals, not amplifiers. I guess I'm an idiot, aren't I? I wouldn't say that you're an idiot. The comment hurt my feelings. Why did you use so many exclamation points and question marks? And then I go on, you know, why won't you won't admit you were busting my balls. I did nothing but support you from day one on this thing. And he won't answer. So there we have it, folks. Dickish comment of the day. The point here, there is an actual point. It's not just, oh, poor me, everyone's mean to me on the internet. The point is, if you find yourself, and I do too, I'm not immune from this, If I find myself typing a dickish comment, I try now at this point to catch myself, and backspace. Hit the backspace and figure out a way you can get your point across without being a dick or hurting somebody's feelings. So Rodrigo Montiero, you have a couple of rat play-alongs on your channel. It doesn't look good for you. This is the circuit that I built. These are the JFETs. JFETs are transistors that on paper they behave similarly in some ways, kind of similarly to how a vacuum tube would behave. So the logical thought extension is then they would work better than other transistors when you're trying to build a circuit that normally uses a vacuum tube and replace a vacuum tube with a transistor. And what's the purpose for that? Well, then you can run it on a much lower voltage. It's much less current to power it, and it's much cheaper to build and to run and to maintain and everything else. Now, some people will say they don't like the way that the JFET breaks up. I do. I don't like it for a high gain device, but for clean or gritty, oh man, these things sound phenomenal. This was a complicated build. You have to adjust each one of these to hit 4 volt, half of your input voltage. So if your input voltage is 9, they call it biasing. So you connect your multimeter to the point of the drain, I think it is, and the other one on the ground, and then you feed it 9 volts. And whatever the exact input voltage is, let's say it's 9.06 volts, then you'd want, half of that. So you'd figure out it would be 4.53. Anyway, you bias that. Typically, I like to bias it with the meter and then put a looper pedal on, play a riff into it, and then see what each one of those do to the circuit when you adjust them by ear, because you might want to bias it a little hotter. Some circuits I like to bias a little hot. But yeah, this is a highly recommended thing. I remember my buddy Pink Jimmy Photon, at the time they dropped a bunch of these preamps. They all came out at the same time. And I built the Laney. I built 2 Marshalls. I did not build the Bassman. I think I built the Plexi, maybe it was. But I liked this. This was the one that I really liked the best. So I've got a few more of these laying around that I had never boxed up. If I was going to build another amp from scratch, this is what I would use. These are really good preamps. This is a good starting point if you're going to build something like this. And they have different layouts with the input switching and the way that the channels are. It is kind of complicated with the wiring for all of the pots. So you're going to want to figure that out before you jump into it and decide what you want. Mind you, the one that I built didn't have a real lot of gain. It really didn't. This sounded great for a pedal platform for the Carl Martin Plexitone. It just sounded absolutely phenomenal. My buddy Pink Jimmy Photon, he claimed he built this, and I remember him saying he loves it. I did not build this because it's got a bipolar power supply. So you need plus 16 and then another power supply with minus 16. So you'll tie 2 ends of those power supplies together and create a common ground, and then the hot side will go here and the negative side will go here. Or you can build a circuit that will perform the same thing, that will take a 9-volt battery and split it off. So I'm not sure how he did it when he built his. This uses a 1458 IC chip. He told me a bit after this that his favorite IC is the 1458. For years, I had been saying there was something magically special about the LM741, and then he said, oh, well, the 1458 is a dual 741. And this made sense to me because Pink Jimmy Photon knows what he hears. He's that type of guy. He listens with his ears, And I had come to that same conclusion that, wow, these chips, they all sound the same pretty much, with the exception of the 741 was a standout. And that's why was going on about it. And he ended up claiming this chip as his favorite number and sidestepping the 741, but they're the same thing. And I have never tried this. He claimed this thing is awesome. This is a lower parts count and it's a lot easier to wire up, but it has the bipolar power supply. And that's the reason I went with this. Also, I like the idea of the Pink Jimmy Photon claims that these, he hates the way that they distort the JFETs. He does not like them. He hates the way they break up. I happen to really like them, but I like them set at a low breakup, not at a high gain thing. Like I said, I like to get my distortion from a bunch of different places rather than all in one, because that tends to be fizzy and tends to be unpleasing to the ear, backing up the photon theorem as well. So when you go to buy a JFET, you can find them on sale at places like eBay. And the size of this, like a penny, would be like about this big. You know, like this is a pretty small thing. This here, you figure, okay, these three, the measurement of these three is going to be that. So this is really small. Like this thing goes on here. That's the JFET. This is called an SMT JFET. It's the same thing as this. Okay, they might be a little bit cheaper, but they're tiny, and you got to get this board, and then like cut 3 of these and solder them in here, so you can fit it in the same hole. Or you can buy one of these. You know, the thing is, when you buy these, a lot of times they'll say like it's DSG, and when you'll get them, they'll be DGS. It'll be some goofy pinout, or they won't work, or they'll be fake. Like they just wrote J2 on them there, and they're not really JFETs. So I had all kinds of nothing but heartache buying these, the T92 package, J201. Then I started looking around trying to find these daughter boards and buying these from Germany, and they were legit. So I found a supplier, and I wanted to turn you guys on. If you're still watching, this is the bonus information and the dick of the day. Delic PCB. This is the place. This guy sells those little PCBs. They're tiny. 4-pack, 65 cents. Anywhere else you'd pay $4 to get 4 of these. So you could tell Analog Mike, you're going to wait 6 years and pay him $800 for his Prince of Analog Fuzzy Goodness pedal. You're going to sell him your daughter when she turns 18, and he'll let you play through his analog rig because he's the only one who knows. Or you can head over to Delic, get your SMD to THD 4-pack. You're going to need 4. Build yourself one of these Marshall JFET preamps. Slap a TPA 3116 D2 mono amp board. You don't need the spring reverb. And build yourself a do-it-yourself Marshall. And that choice is up to you. Ultimately, the most important thing is don't be a dick.